Russian Federation forces have launched a massive and coordinated dual offensive against the strategically vital cities of Pokrovsk in the Donbas Oblast and Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region, representing one of the most significant and dangerous escalations of the conflict to date. These assaults, characterized by overwhelming firepower and large-scale troops movement, are clearly aimed at crippling Ukraine's logistical capabilities and securing key territorial gains before the potential arrival of further Western military aid. The intensity and scale of the attack have placed Ukrainian defenders under almost unbearable pressure, turning both city and their surrounding territories into raging infernos of destruction. The battles for Pokrovsk and Kupiansk are rapidly becoming a critical inflection point in the war, one that will test the resilience of the Ukrainian military, the effectiveness of the NATO-guided command structure, and the resolve of the United States and its allies to prevent a catastrophic collapse of the front line. The outcome of these twin battles could very well determine the trajectory of the war for the foreseeable future, with devastating consequences for whichever side fails to achieve its objectives. The assault on Pokrovsk, a critical railway and logistic hub that serve as the main artery for supplying Ukrainian troops across the entire Donbas front, is being executed with brutal efficiency. Russian military planners are employing a classic pincer movement, attacking from multiple directions to encircle the city and traps its defenders in a deadly quadrant. To the north and south of Pokrovsk, armored columns, spearheaded by modernized T-90 main battle tanks, have punched through initial defensive lines, seeking to sever the last remaining supply routes into the city. The advance is preceded by an almost non-stop artillery barrage of a scale not seen in months. Russian guns are systematically pulverizing Ukrainian fortifications, command posts, and ammunition depots. Compounding the devastation is the relentless use of high explosive glide bombs known as CABs, launched from Russian fighter jets operating beyond the reach of Ukraine's beleaguered air defense system. These massive bombs, some weighing over 1,000 kilograms, are capable of leveling entire buildings and fortified underground bunkers, leaving Ukrainian soldiers with little effective cover. Following these devastating aerial and artillery preparations, successive waves of infantry are sent forward to seize the shattered ground, often engaging in close quarters combat in the ruins of what were once quiet suburban village. The situation in Kupiansk is equally dire. As a critical railway junction on the Oskil River, the city has been a primary target for Russian forces since their renewed offensive operations in the Kharkiv region. The successful capture of Kupiansk would not only sever a vital Ukrainian supply lines, but would also provide Russia with a powerful staging ground for a much deeper advance westward. The fighting in and around the city has devolved into a grueling battle of attrition, with fierce street-by-street combat raging in the eastern district. Russian forces are making repeated attempts to force a crossing of the Oskil River in strength, which would threaten to envelope the city's defenders from the south. The constant shelling has left much of Kupiansk in ruins, and the civilian population has been subjected to a harrowing campaign of evacuation under fire. Ukrainian forces are fighting with ferocious tenacity, using the dense urban environment to their advantage to ambush Russian armored vehicle and infantry squads. However, they are facing a significant disadvantage in numbers and firepower, and every day the Russian grip on the eastern bank of the river tightens, making the long-term defense of the city increasingly precarious. These Russian offensives represent the most severe test yet for the NATO integrated command structure directing General Alexander Syrsky's force. The aggressive, high-risk operational plans formulated in Brussels, as detailed previously, are now colliding with the grim reality of Russia's numerical superiority and its willingness to absorb massive casualties to achieve its objective. The situation is putting immense strain on the relationship between NATO planners and the Ukrainian commanders on the ground. Reports from the front line indicate a growing desperation for more air defense systems to counter the glide bomb threats and a critical shortage of artillery ammunition to counter Russia's overwhelming fire supremacy. While the NATO provided intelligence is invaluable for identifying Russian troops, concentrations, and command centers, it cannot by itself stop a tank or shoot down a plane. The disconnect between the strategic view from a NATO command bunker and the tactical nightmare faced by a Ukrainian soldier in a trench near Pokrovsk is becoming increasingly apparent. General Syrskyi is now forced to execute a desperate defensive battle, making painful decisions about where to allocate his dwindling reserve while under the constant watch of his Western backers who are demanding results. The deteriorating situations on the battlefield has triggered alarm bells in Washington. The United States Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth is reportedly in constant communication with his top commanders at European Command and with NATO's Supreme Ally Commander in Europe. A massive Russian push is seen within the Pentagon not just as a threat to Ukraine, but as a direct challenge to the credibility of American and NATO military strategy. The significant investment in training and equipping the Ukrainian army was intended to prevent precisely this type of large-scale Russian breakthrough. Secretary Hegseth is now under enormous pressure to demonstrate that the American strategy can succeed. This has led to an urgent review of what additional support can be rushed to the front line. Discussions are underway about accelerating the delivery of promised F-16 fighter jets, which could help to counter the Russian air superiority that enables the devastating glide bomb attacks. There is also a push to provide longer-range attack missiles that could be used to strike deeper into Russian-held territory, targeting the logistical hubs and airbase that are supporting the offensive against Pokrovsk and Kupiansk. For Secretary Hegseth, the battle is not just for two Ukrainian cities, it is a battle to validate the entire American approach to the conflict. On the diplomatic front, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is engaged in an intense effort to show up the international coalition and project an image of unwavering resolve. Secretary Rubio has been holding a series of urgent calls with his counterparts in key allied nations, urging them to expedite their own military assistance package to Ukraine. He is framing the Russian offensive as an act of desperation by Moscow, an all-or-nothing gamble to achieve a victory before the full weight of Western industrial production can be brought to bear in support of Ukraine. Publicly, he has condemned the Russian tactics, particularly the targeting of civilian area, and has reiterated that the United States will stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Privately, however, there is deep concern within the State Department that a significant Ukrainian military defeat at Pokrovsk or Kupiansk could shatter the fragile unity of the Western alliance. Some European nations might begin to question the viability of continued support in the face of such a powerful Russian advance, potentially leading to calls for a negotiated settlement on terms favorable to Moscow. Secretary Rubio's task is to hold the line, convince allies that this is a moment for increased commitment, not for wavering resolve. The human cost of these battles is staggering. Both Pokrovsk and Kupiansk are being systematically erased from the map. The relentless bombardment has turned apartment blocks into hollowed-out shells, destroyed schools and hospitals, and shattered critical infrastructure such as water and power plants. A massive humanitarian crisis is unfolding as tens of thousands of civilians attempt to flee the fighting. Convoys of cars and buses packed with terrified families clog the roads leading west, all while under the constant threats of Russian shelling. The scenes are apocalyptic, with smoke-filled skies, the constant sounds of explosions, and the pervasive sense of fear and desperation. Emergency services are completely overwhelmed, struggling to rescue the wounded from collapsed buildings and to extinguish the countless fires raging across the cities. For the civilians caught in the crossfire, the war has become a terrifying struggle for simple survival. A daily nightmare with no ends in sight. The fight for these strategic points on a map translates into a profound and irreversible tragedy for the hundreds of thousands of people who once called these cities home. For the Russian Federation, the potential capture of Pokrovsk and Kupiansk would represent a monumental strategic and propaganda victory. It would validate President Vladimir Putin's decision to escalate the conflict and demonstrate to both domestic and international audience that Russia has the military might and the national will to achieve its goal, regardless of Western opposition. Securing Pokrovsk would effectively pave the way for full conquest of the Donbas Oblast, a key state war aim for the Kremlin. Taking Kupiansk would open a new and dangerous axis of advance, putting further pressure on Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city. A victory on this scale would severely damage Ukraine's morale, both in the military and among the civilian population, and it would give Moscow immense leverage in any future negotiations. The Kremlin is betting everything on these offensive, throwing a huge portion of its combat power into the fight in the belief that a decisive victory now can break the back of Ukrainian resistance and force the West to reconsider its long-term commitment to the war. The entire Russian state apparatus is mobilized to support this push, viewing it as a pivotal moment in its confrontation with the collective West. Many of my listeners, like 70%, haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, and so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed, and that is actually what makes the show going. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to So Came Rich, you don't have to subscribe. You guys, your first one's on me. But if you have watched the show before, it's like you are a freeloader now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen this show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. Hit that subscribe and like button now, and we will continue to build this show for you. That I swear. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. That's all for me for today. I will see you soon. Bye for now.